Welcome back to the Church of Business and Finance podcast. I'm Reverend Richard Cooper, and this is my girlfriend and co-host, Joanna Kirchner.
Hello, hello.
Let's talk about some of the things that have happened over this past week. What have you done? How have you profited? How have you invested your time? Did you waste time? Did you put time towards things that were going to grow and become assets for you? Or did you maybe slack off a little bit? You know, a lot of us, we do some stuff that's wasteful and some stuff that brings us good stuff. So I want to know, what was some of the things that you did this past week? You can write down in the comments or wherever it's down there. But let's think about that. The things that we have done over the past week were our investment. Now, these investments could have brought us back profit, which I hope they were. I hope you had a profitable week last week, whether you were investing in the stock market or investing in a job or you were investing some time with some family or whatever you were doing. But I hope that it was profitable. Last week, I did some stock stuff. I did some work stuff. But it was time spent, and it's money spent at the same time. Time is money. And it's a concept that a lot of people don't understand because money seems to be free-flowing right now. People, they give money away to do things. And that can happen when you have an economy as robust as we have here in the U.S. When we have the ability to create money. But that's the thing. How are we creating money? We'll get into that later and understand the real, the meat and potatoes and the grinding gears that happen to create money. But let's just think about our time first, because we all have some time, and we don't know how much time we have, but if we've got today, then, well, we've got something. And let's think about how we're using that time. Joanna, for the past week, you spent your time doing stuff. What did you spend some of your time doing?
Exercising. Work out a lot. Spend a lot of time doing that, I feel like hours a day. Just working on my exercise regime. And also making content for my stock trading page.
Okay. What else? What else did you do this past week?
I would say that's about it. And, obviously I have to eat, and that takes a while too.
Mm-hmm. Did you take any time to learn any new stuff? Did you read any? I did. I read some Ayn Rand, and I watched some movies that were eye-opening.
Mm-hmm. And is that how you pronounce her name? Anne,
I believe.
Ayn Rand.
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
Check her out if you haven't heard of her.
What would you say your favorite book is that you've read by her?
Let's see. I've read Anthem. I've read We the Living, and I've read The Fountainhead. And I think out of those three, We the Living definitely sticks out in my mind the most.
Why is that?
Because it relates so heavily to what's happening right now. It's join a certain party, and basically you're taken care of and you'll be provided for by the government, or maintain your independence and your individuality and kind of get shut out from food rations and housing rations and education and stuff like that. So just because that book was written in the middle of the last century, around there, the pattern seems to be repeating itself, and just like a cycle, just over and over again, like a snowball. And we never seem to learn, even though there are all these books about oppression by the government. Like, I just finished reading...
well, these are about history in many ways. Because, this has actually happened. We've tried these types of things many times throughout history, obviously, correct?
It seems like it. I read Tale of Two Cities. That was about the French Revolution and how they cut off the heads of all their nobility. They just, the peasants, I guess, they just revolted because they were starving and just pushed into, this corner, dirty, dark, and desolate corner. And, what do you expect is going to happen when, you, try to, push everybody down like that? I feel like it's just pent-up energy that's ripe for something.
Yeah, this is kind of what I want to talk about for this week. These concepts of business and finance and understanding money, understanding how money works and how you can bank on that and how you can profit off it more by reinvesting. All these kinds of things, these are not new things. These are things that have been around for a long time. And even if you had no money and people were just trading rocks or salt or gold or whatever, the concept doesn't change. And learning how to understand how to work with these things, how to use these tools, will allow you to either be used, by other people, or to, in a good way or in a bad way, maybe abused by other people. It can allow you to use these tools yourself to hurt other people or to help other people. It's very interesting to see how these things can work. You see, long, long, long ago, she was talking about people during the French Revolution that were upset at the nobility. Long, long, long before that, everybody had nothing. All right, everybody started from nothing. Now, when we all started from having basically nothing, there was no money. There was, somebody maybe who had a height advantage, or they were faster. They could run faster. Maybe they could see better than the other people, or their immune system had grown to be stronger than somebody else's. All these different types of things. Maybe they were lucky and they saw somebody else. They learned from watching somebody else's pattern be bad. Maybe they saw that when they ate a certain thing, that would hurt them. And when they saw somebody else eating something, that would make them be better. And copying these patterns, learning and growing, this is part of evolution. But this is the evolution, not just necessarily on the biological sense, but in the knowledge sense and understanding stuff. And we've watched kind of in a weird way, because we have to fill in these gaps. You see, there was nobody there to go off and film and see how was it that certain people came into power. We have to be able to read books. And when we talk about books that have been written about all kinds of stuff, we get a little snapshot to understanding how history works. And if you start to read history, you start to see that these patterns emerge. And this is no different than the patterns of healthy eating, of exercise, the patterns of how you deal with a certain kind of problem because you learned how to deal with it from somebody else. It's no different than learning that, if I eat this is going to make me feel a certain way. These patterns are really no different. So the people that have and can make money very quickly, understand it's just a pattern. Now, obviously, throughout history, we've had times when people have oppressed other people and stopped them from copying the patterns that have worked. But the patterns are there, and I want you to understand that there are patterns, and that these patterns are repeatable, that you can use these same patterns that somebody else uses. One of those patterns that people use is to understand, okay, well, I've got, these are my bills. These are my bills. I'm going to try to find a job that can cover all my bills. This is a pattern for a lot of people. And a lot of people take a pattern where they're saying, you know what, I'm just going to take the first job that'll work for me, or rather that I can work for them. Sometimes it doesn't work for you. But I'm going to take this pattern and I'm going to try to copy it. And I'm going to maybe be able to do well, maybe not. But look at what the result of that pattern has been. When people just decide, these are my bills and I need to find a job that can cover my bills, what has been the pattern? It can work out, and it can work out poorly and all kinds of stuff, but what has been the pattern that you've seen? Instead, let's look at this from a different way and see, instead of saying, I've got my bills and I want to find a job that's going to be able to cover it, look at the pattern of the people that are able to find a job and then build a life within that. Does that work out well? Well, everybody's got different stuff going on in their life. Sometimes you've got bills that you have to consider first, so then you have to go get these jobs to cover up the bills. But understand that if you can start to recognize those patterns, you can start to change the patterns that you're committing to. If you're doing it just blindly and just following this one pattern, imagine doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. It doesn't seem very logical. If you keep doing the same thing and you're getting a slightly different result, maybe it's because you're actually doing slightly better. But if you want to have a drastic change, then you have to make drastic changes in the patterns. If you want a drastically different outcome, you have to have a drastically different input. Think about how you spend and invest your time. Not just your time, but your money, your effort, your thoughts. People say sometimes that there's a law of attraction, and that you're going to be able to think about something, and that's going to be what comes to you. The converse then should also be true, that if something comes to you, you must have been thinking about it. And this is where this kind of idea just falls apart. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes it can be coincidental. There are times when you have hard work and it results in a good outcome. But what about the people that work really hard and don't get a good outcome? Think about how much that pattern is actually prevalent in our society today. You know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So sometimes just doing what you think is good or working hard isn't going to yield you the results that you want. Now, if your goal is to have, let's say excess money or have more time available to you, what you're going to have to do is not just think of, oh, well, how can I copy this pattern or that pattern, but think about what is the actual pattern you're trying to copy and what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And then look at other people that have achieved that outcome and see what kind of patterns they took or that they executed to be able to get to those places. It's a concept that most people won't go down. It won't go down that type of road because it sounds outlandish. Now, it should be common sense, but it's not common sense. And why is that? Well, again, we can look at history, and we can see that when people start to have a little bit of power, there's people out there who don't want they don't want a lot of money. They don't want to have a whole bunch of diamonds. They're not interested in just having the biggest house or having a lot of stuff. What they want is power. And when they see that people are able to start having power, they start to think of ways that they can take that power back away from them. Because unlike money, there's a limit to how much power someone can have, especially when they're thinking of how much power they can have over another person. With money, you can be rich, he can be rich, she can be rich, this person over here can be rich. But with power, only one person can be the most powerful. And this concept is a devious one because it starts to get into the details of why it is that there's certain people who don't want you to have power. You see, they don't want you to not have money. They don't care if you have money. I promise you, there's people out there that want to give you lots and lots of money, but they don't want you to have any power with it. And we start to see this when we look at things like communism, with socialism, because we see that there's people out there that can have a lot of money, but if they're only allowed to spend it in a certain way. But there's the thing, man, is when they're only allowed to spend it in a certain way, it doesn't matter how much money they have because they're not able to use that money in a way that they'd like to. Imagine I told you could have $1 million, or $1 billion, but you can't spend it how you want to. You have to spend it the way I tell you to. Now, does that really seem like you're rich? Did you really have the power you wanted to have? Maybe it's not money you wanted to have. It was the options that money was going to give you before I came in and decided to control the market or regulate the market or decide where you have to spend your money or where you can't spend your money or how much money you have to spend on me every time you want to spend some of your money. Or maybe there's a tax that you have to pay to be able to buy something that you want to. If you work, let's take this on a simple level. Let's say you want to buy something that costs $10. And you say, okay, I want to go work for somebody and I have to go work for $10 to cover my bill that I want to have. I want to pay the bill to buy the thing that costs $10. So I've decided I want to go work for that $10. Well, if I go work for that $10 and I say to somebody, hey, I want to work for you for $10, and this person over here says, sure, here's $10, do this work for me. When I try to go buy the thing that costs $10, I can't. You know why? Because I don't have $10 anymore. I worked for this person for $10, but then I had to pay some taxes. So let's be really moderate and say that now I have to pay maybe $1 out of it. Now I have $9. Just 10% of it. It's not that much. But what about the person over here who's going to now sell me this thing that was $10? Well, I only have $9. I've got to work more just to be able to earn the $10 I wanted to. It's inflated my cost. But it's not done yet, because when I go to buy whatever it is that I'm going to buy, it's probably not going to cost just $10. It's going to be $10 plus tax. And it can't be just the plus tax. See, that the cost of that thing also has to be the amount that can be able to pay that person that I'm buying it from. They probably want to make a profit or have some money on it. So even if it costs them $10, I'm still not going to get it for $10. Think about it. I want something that costs $10, so I work for $10, but after that, I don't have the $10. Why? It's because somebody sticks their hand in there and takes some of that money away. They're controlling where I spend that money. If I had worked for that $10, I'd only have $9. So even before I spend it, it's already gotten a little piece taken away. But when I go to spend it, I'm going to get hit again with it. I don't get the amount of work that I put in to get this thing. Why? If I went to go talk to this person directly and work for them and say, hey, I'd like to give you $10 of my labor to buy this thing that costs $10, I should be able to get it. Again, maybe they don't want my labor. Maybe they'd rather have my money so they can take that money and go spend it somewhere else. Maybe I can't provide something that's of value to them. But we can all agree on the value of the dollar as a pivot point. When the government starts to, or anybody, starts to decide that they want to step in on your work and take a piece of your power, a piece of your energy, and say, hey, you did something, but you owe that piece to me. In any amount, whether it's a little bit or a lot. We see this differently for some odd reason when it comes down to the government than in any other instance. You know, on the street, we would see somebody pimping, taking a little piece of that money from them while the person's working. With the government, it's just business as usual.
But we need money for the roads.
Yeah, people say that. Of course, we do have money for the roads, and there's plenty of places that have roads that are built without taxes or anything else. To maintain them, we have plenty of places that want to have private roads, or they do have private roads. We have toll bridges. If taxes paid for these things, we wouldn't have toll bridges. If taxes paid for these things, we wouldn't have taxes on the gasoline. But where? Where does all the money go? And see, the thing is here is that sometimes there are things that we want to spend our money on and our time on. But when we allow someone else to come in there and inflate it, it costs us more. And I don't know about you, but I want to spend less on the things that I'm buying. I don't want my prices to go up. I want them to go down. You know, when I go out to compare things, whether I'm buying them on Amazon or looking at a restaurant on Yelp, or I'm looking to compare and buy tires or whatever, I'm looking to see what can I get that's comparable. What was the market offering me that can give me a good value for my dollar? And when you start to, you know, this is one of the reasons why a monopoly is a bad idea. Because when there's only one person there, there's no competition. There is no reason to push the price down because you don't have a choice. So think about when you pay taxes for the roads. There's no competition. You don't have somebody who's sitting there and saying, well, this is going to cost this much, this is going to cost that much. It doesn't work out that way. And even if you had the best people in government that were trying their best to go off and do it, they still have their time that they're putting in. So the price, no matter what, is going to be more expensive than if you did it yourself. Especially when you start looking at how it stacks up and it goes up from the city to the state to the federal level. There's all these little pieces that get added on so that each person can make their little bit. But I want you to think about your week and your past week and the next week. How are you going to invest? How did you invest? What patterns were you following? What outcomes did you want? And what do you want to get next time? How can you improve it? How can you change it? All right? We're going to look at that next time. A lot of love. Peace.
Until next time.